we'll see if it actually records.
Okay.
I'll take it over.
Now, from here on out, I have to smile, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah, now you have to mind with you, be nice.
I always smile.
I know.
I just don't smile all the time.
I recognize you. Well. You're
So we keep trying.
How are you?
So I'm gonna get this side this evening.
Who's taking over this?
You guys you can come up
Come
here
up.
now.
You're the only one tonight.
You're the only ones over there.
Yes, won't you?
All right, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We're going to be opening the public hearing for 61 East Main. Notice is hereby given that the Zoning Board of Appeals of Washingtonville will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 31st, 2022 at 7 p.m. in Village Hall, 9 Fairlawn Drive, Washingtonville, New York, on the application of 61 East Main Street Associates LLC for an area variance of the minimum lot area per dwelling unit from 14,000 square foot per unit to 6.759 square foot per unit at 61 East Main Street. SLB 114-1-3.22/113-2-31 for the construction of 28 total dwelling units. The application and plans are available for review Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. All interested parties may be heard at said time and place. By order of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
And just for the record, we did receive proof of publication that the notice was published in the Times Herald Record. Your official paper, former official paper is no longer in business, so it has
I hear
changed.
they are coming back, but for now.
For now, it's the Times Herald
Record, yeah. Okay, I guess we'll start with you guys. I just want to say, before we start, we're going to let the applicants say what they have to say. Anybody that has any questions, please raise your hand in an orderly fashion, state your name, address, and if you would, after you on the way out, whatever, put your name and address down on a piece of paper by Marissa. Please be courteous, offer, constructive comments, and don't interrupt. Let them finish first, all right? Thank you.
And may I have, before we, may I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Oh, sorry. Motion to open the public
Motion
hearing.
to open the public hearing?
Second.
Steve, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Morgante. For the record, I am the project engineer for this application. It's before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And this application, the address of it is 61 East Main Street, which is essentially diagonally across the street from us over here on Route 94. As it currently stands, this particular site has an existing structure on it with some bedrooms and some parking, and the proposed action tonight is looking to demolish that building and associated parking and essentially present two individual structures on the site, both with a 7,000 square foot footprint, and each individual structure would have 14 dwelling units associated with it for a total of 20 dwelling units. And in accordance with the code that the Village of Washingtonville has in place, we would provide essentially 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit for a total of 56 spaces. The site currently has a curb cut off of New York State Route 94. We're essentially maintaining that curb cut approximately at the same location. We will have cars enter and exit through this one location. And as you can see here, we have parking along the frontage of both buildings and an island in the middle that will be landscaped. We have handicapped parking spaces that will provide access directly to those buildings on either side. We have designed the site also to be capable of handling fire apparatus during emergency events. We have shown turning diagrams where the trucks will come in and essentially navigate around the site and return back to Route 94 at that time. We have a pretty detailed engineering plan and grading plan has been prepared. We've advanced this plan pretty far along the planning board level. We've got a stormwater management system that's proposed here. The site is underlain by a lot of sandy gravel material, which is very good draining material. So what we're proposing are essentially infiltration chambers beneath the parking lot. Those infiltration chambers will capture the stormwater runoff that's generated from the impervious surfaces, and it will essentially recharge it back into the groundwater supply. Some of the building and parking is located within the actual 100-year flood zone, a very small amount. What we're showing here is the volume of fill here would be about 451 cubic yards that's required. And as a result of that, we're actually also removing 451 cubic yards out of the floodplain, so we have a zero net fill situation within the floodplain. This will not impact floodwaters within the village of Washingtonville as it relates to the construction of this site. And by the way, that's required as part of your flood management code in the village of Washingtonville. We will be connecting this site to existing water and sewer infrastructure that's located in the village. We've discussed this with the planning board engineer. There's adequate capacity for both for this particular project. Again, we have a pretty detailed landscaping and lighting plan that's been prepared and reviewed by the planning board. All of that seems to be in order. So the site as it stands right now is shown. It's pretty well engineered. We're pretty confident in the proposal that we're presenting to the ZBA tonight in terms of any bulk area variances that we're requiring. It is worth noting that as it stands right now, we do not need any variances as it relates to front yards, rear yards, lot widths, any of that situation. The only thing we are seeking tonight is a variance in the sense of we're looking for 28 dwelling units as opposed to 14. At this point now, I've kind of given you a general overview of the site plan and the engineering portion of the project, and I will turn it over to my colleague, Patrick Cleary, who's actually our project planner, who's going to take the baton and talk to you all about the actual variances that we're requesting and how that can be considered by the village ZBA.
Excuse me, just before you hear from Mr. Cleary, my name is Brian Gibson, before, and I just wanted to clarify what the end goal here, because it doesn't fit within the nomenclature of the variance we're applying for. And that is, I hope everybody will keep in mind, is that on this piece of property, we have a permitted use for 14 residential units, plus 14,000 square feet of office space. And what we're asking for here tonight is not to build a bigger building or impose a heavier use on the property, but simply to switch out the resident for the office space.
For those that have not been maybe at previous meetings, originally the plan was to have office spaces on the bottom and residential up top. It's changed now, so it's all residential, which I think most of the boards felt was better. But, so that was the change that he's talking about.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Cleary. For the record, I'm the principal of Cleary Consulting, and we prepared the zoning analysis report that I hope all of you have seen and taken a look at. So I'm going to try to summarize that report so I don't drag on too long. So Mike described the development of this property. It's 4.5 acres in size, and we're in the OR zoning district, the office residence zoning district. As Mike indicated, fully compliant with all of the setback, bulk, height, dimensional regulations of that zone. The site is sensitively designed to mitigate the impacts on that environmentally constrained portion of the property by the creek in the rear of the property. So what we've done is put together a project that meets all the rules, with the single exception of the lot area per dwelling unit provision. So in your code today, there is a provision that requires a minimum of 14,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Parenthetically, that's a fairly restrictive provision for multifamily housing. But nevertheless, having stated that, what we are doing, if you apply that provision to our site, we have a yield, as Mike indicated earlier, 14 dwelling units. We're seeking 28 dwelling units. That number is based on the economic reality of developing a viable project on the property. It's not an arbitrary number. It's there because it needs to be there. So when this project was conceived, when any project's conceived, you kind of look at two different things. Number one, is it needed? And number two, does it fit? So let me just touch on those 2 points briefly. Is it needed? So I've understood, I saw some of the emails that came in today, that we don't want any more apartments in the community. As you probably know, there's a significant housing shortage in our region. And that was illustrated quite clearly with the 3-county housing needs assessment that was produced a few years ago that looked at Ulster, Dutchess, and Orange counties. The deficiency is in the thousands of dwelling units. There is a significant deficiency. Since that report was produced, that gap is closed a little bit, but it still remains in thousands of dwelling units, and particularly multifamily housing units. That's a significant deficiency that's been established throughout the region. So yes, there's a need for this project. There's a market for this project. It can be economically viable, provided the project pencils out at the end of the day. Number two, does it fit? So as Mike indicated before, a lot of work has gone into devising a project that meets all of the requirements on that site, avoids the constrained portions of the property, utilizes existing curb cuts, does all the things that a good site plan would want to do on the property. As I said earlier, developments need to be economically viable to make them work. Needs to pencil out at the end of the day, need to pay financing for projects. So there's certain fundamental elements that are necessary. Again, the number of dwelling units that are proposed here are necessary to make the project viable. Here's the important takeaway with regard to our project that was alluded to earlier. If we were to modify the plan to meet the minimum lot area per dwelling unit requirement of 14 units, nothing would change. We'd still have those 2 buildings. We'd still have them in the exact same location. What would change would be the number of bedrooms in the units. So instead of 28 2-bedroom units, we got 14 3-bedroom units. That's what would change. There might be fewer doors on the building, but there'd be more windows on the building. So the physical configuration of the property would not change at all. Interestingly, shifting from 2-bedroom units to 3-bedroom units in some instances results in greater impacts. There's a higher trip generation rate for 3-bedroom units. There would be more school children generated from a 3-bedroom unit compared to a 2-bedroom unit. The impacts on utilities and infrastructure, perhaps more for a 3-bedroom unit compared to a 2-bedroom unit. So again, there's a downside to manipulating this project to make it comply with that provision as it exists today. Again, absolutely no change to the site. Does it fit? Again, to that question, does it fit on the site? The issue is really character. How does this affect the character of the community? It's settled law that a project, a permitted permissible use in a particular zone that complies is tantamount to a legislative finding that the use is consistent with the character. This is a permitted principal use in this zone. Our density translates to 6.5 units per acre. That's what we're looking at here as a planning metric, 6.5 units per acre. If you look at the area just north of the site, I'm talking about character, some of those projects, 7 units per acre. We're very similar to a unique area of the village with where this site is situated. This site is on the southern end of an area of the village that's predominantly devoted to garden apartments and townhouse type developments. Figure 8 in our report illustrates that quite clearly. When you look at a map, this is what exists in this area, and we exist on the southern boundary of that area. Is there an alternative to this? We could petition the village to rezone the property. The problem with that is that the existing OR zone embeds in it protective criteria that preserves the character of East Main Street. Modifying the setbacks and so forth by utilizing a different zone is sort of counterproductive. It undermines the character, again, that's embedded in the existing zone. So we want to work with the existing zone. And again, we have that one issue that we're dealing with in this particular instance. As mentioned earlier, we have an alternative that complies. That office mixed-use building, 14,000 square feet of office space. And I think you alluded to, Madam Chairman, office use today is a market segment that has experienced a precipitous decline. Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, nail in the coffin of the office market. If we build more office space, the only thing we're doing is detracting from the existing offices that exist in the village today. Bad idea. So the alternative of that use really doesn't make a lot of sense. There'd be more traffic, there'd be more parking on the site, more impervious surfaces on the site. That's an option that doesn't really work for the village. So in summary, we have permitted as a right use on the site. We meet all the requirements with the exception of the one that we discussed there earlier. If we were to provide a project that complies with the standards, we're probably creating a project that's more impactful at the end of the day. So our report goes into the 5-factor test in some detail. And I sort of summarized it by my comments this evening. If you'd like me to go into that in greater detail, I'm happy to do that. But again, I think we've got a project that ticks all the boxes. And we have one issue that's sort of an unusual issue as it applies to the site, but we found a way to address it, I think, satisfactorily. Remember, compliance doesn't change a lick on the property. It would be the exact same building, the exact same property. So having said that, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Well, I think for the public hearing, we're gonna acknowledge receipt. What I would recommend before we open the comments to the public, I'd say two things. One, we'll acknowledge receipt of the written emails. But two, I also want to just let the public know that tonight is really designed as a time, there's not gonna be a huge back and forth between the board and the public, or the applicant and the public. All the questions or comments that are raised by the public are being, you'll see me dutifully writing them down. The applicant will be required to address those, and the same goes before the planning board process. The applicant may not provide you a specific answer tonight, but as part of our evaluation, they will be required to address them prior to any decision made by the zoning board of appeals. I will also just state, so to clarify for the record, that at present, this application is before the planning board. The planning board has declared its intent to be lead agency and is elected to conduct a coordinated review. For our purposes, what that means is that the ZBA cannot take action until the planning board renders a final determination on the environmental review of the project. The applicant is here really tonight to get a feel from the public as well as from the board, how things are looking. At the conclusion of the planning board's environmental review, they will adopt one of two documents, either a negative declaration or if there's a larger environmental impact finding statement. Once that document is adopted, the planning board, then the ZBA is legally permitted to take action. So because that process hasn't played out yet, it's a little bit of back and forth between the two boards. Because that process has not played out tonight, this board is not able to take any action other than to provide general thoughts, but that is not a decision as to the board. So before I open it to public in the audience, I do just want to recognize and acknowledge receipt of, and these will be incorporated into the record, the applicant has been provided copies. Emails from Maria, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Nieves, Scott Justi, Rachel Frazier, and Keith and Sandra Heinz, and those will be incorporated into the record. Before I open it to the public, does the applicant have anything further?
really put our position before the board, they understand what's going on in the public around us. I would just wait to, after we've heard from the public, to make some comments to address what might.
We can do that, or often I ask applicants to submit a written, so we have a solid record, so.
I think we'll do both then, okay, but I want to be able to clarify any questions before the board.
All right,
So we can start soliciting comment.
anybody have any questions or comments? Can you please state your name and address?
Yeah, my name is Pat Mitchell. I live at 10 York Place.
I'm sorry, York
York Place.
Place, okay.
Yes. So I'm a licensed insurance broker, and I'm also a licensed flood broker. Now, with the new flood being program, we have new rates. The rates have gone up, and apartment rates are much higher than office rates for FEMA. And they do two types of ratings, the old and the new. And rates have gone up for flood 2 to 4 times, depending upon what type of risk it is. And FEMA would have to be involved, since we're doing a little bit of moving with the flood. There's a big calculation involved, that means costs. Multiple dwellings are much more expensive with FEMA right now.
And that's federal, so you can't shop around for
Correct.
those that don't know flooding. You don't shop around for the best deal of flood insurance. It's
Correct.
Basically,
I have all my flood books. I work
Yeah.
in the building next door.
thank you. Anybody else? Susan?
Susan Wolski, 24 South Street, Washingtonville. First, a couple things. First of all, I ask that you keep this public hearing open until the transcripts are published. Sitting back here, we can hear nothing that is being said here.
Yes.
Thank you.
So those of us who are especially hearing impaired are not hearing the applicant's words. That's number one. Number two, it was my understanding when this project originally came before this board that there was also a request for a lot line change. I have not heard of anything in this meeting. Is that still the case? This is supposed to be 2 parcels of land that they were trying to make into 1 parcel to accommodate these buildings. Is there still a lot line change before this board?
I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yes, there is a lot line removal, to be clear. So there's actually a lot line right now that separates the 2 tax parcels. That
So you're
line
looking
is,
to change the parcel?
it's going to include both parcels being incorporated into 1 parcel with 1 area.
And is that on your application?
It is.
Because that's not
Yes.
what was put out that I've seen.
And there's one piece that will be, I think we discussed this, that will not be able to be built on,
We'll have a
in the
conservation
future,
of some sort.
which is closest to the Mudna.
Correct,
Right.
okay, and
So
I
that-
would ask that if anything,
Buffer.
be established that that be put in writing,
It will be, yes.
part of the stamp plans. In regards to, I think I heard the applicant saying something about that it's more cost effective and there's a higher need for 2-bedroom units as opposed to 3-bedroom units?
No, I think what they were alluding to was, rather than office space, there's more of a need for a residential dwelling.
Correct, but later on, I believe comment was made about the studies that were done in the lower Hudson Valley regarding housing
I
needs
think
for
that would
rental
have
units.
been 3 bedrooms if,
We're just, can I, do you mind?
go ahead. Go ahead.
All the materials that have been submitted by the applicant are available at Village Hall. The applicant did submit a fairly detailed zoning analysis that can be reviewed. The studies that they've relied on in that are referenced in that study. So all the materials, and you can come anytime, I think Village Hall's 8 to 4.
Yeah.
You can come and the file should be available. You might want to give them a call.
Okay, and I would just like to, though, say to that, as far as somebody who works in the real estate industry, there is a lack of 3-bedroom rentals, much more than there is a lack of 1 to 2-bedroom rentals out there. And I will be the first to admit, there is a severe shortage of rental housing. And we all know that. In regards to putting 56 parking spaces, that's 56 cars, turning onto Main Street, left and right. Once you pass Route 208, there is no place for somebody to avoid turning right to avoid the traffic that's now going to be coming in and out of this parcel. The same thing with making the left out of this parcel. There's not gonna be enough room between this parcel and the light to get into by Stop and Shop over there for that traffic to back up. Anybody who drives through this village from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. knows it is a nightmare. And I live almost a half a mile up 208, and I have traffic backed up in front of my house over the hill towards Spear Brothers, the old Spear Brothers. So you're creating a nightmare. Is there gonna be room for fire trucks to get in and out of there and turn around on the traffic there? And yes, I realize it's right near the firehouse. You know, all these things need to be in consideration. They are asking to reduce the lot size by more than 50% that our code provides. And I just ask that this board take that into consideration before they make any decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anybody else?
Bob Bukowski, 29 Capitol Drive. I also sit on the planning board. Traffic is the biggest concern, in my opinion, given the number of units. Purposely went out, and I've reviewed the materials that the applicant has submitted additionally. I have gone out in the morning and in the afternoons, checked the village traffic, 94, 208. I don't know what we're gonna do with that many more cars. That's all I have to say to that, so take that into consideration, please.
Yes.
Michael Gabaluzzi, 55 East Bay Street, a stone throw from where we're building this new project, which I'm very upset I missed at the beginning. I had a little emergency at my house. I did a little research, 61 East Main Street. It's not for sale, okay? I went on all the realtor sites, not for sale. Last time it was sold, according to this, was on March 4th. Everybody do this when you get home. Do your real estate and look into what I'm talking about. It was sold for $665,000 according to Zillow. Then I looked a little deeper. July 12th, 2019, it was sold for $67,000, which was 3 months later. It confused me so much. What the hell is going on here? This is 2 houses away from me. I own 55 and 53 East Main Street. I don't know if that house ever sold for $665. It's not for sale. I don't know what you're building there. I wish to God I was here 10 minutes earlier. But all I know is it's in my yard, and I don't want no badness in my yard. I don't know what you're planning on building there. I missed the beginning. I'm going to ask my friend when I leave what was spoke about, and I hope I can look it up. I looked it up, and I don't know what's being built there.
You're welcome
There's
to
no
come.
nothing online about what's coming there.
You're welcome to come to Village Hall between 8 and 4, and all the plans are here. Just come in and ask. They'll show you.
But it's right now, nothing's on. If I look it up, this is happening tonight. I don't know when this is you're talking about. What's being built there? Who's moving into my neighborhood? Am I going to get screwed? Is my taxes going to go up? Do I got to support someone else? I don't know. I don't know. Listen, I'm from Brooklyn. I've been through this. I've been through the bad. You know, I was in a nice area. All of a sudden it turned bad, and then we had to move. We did it 3 times. I was very upset. I'm hoping to God, that's why I moved here. I hope it doesn't happen again. I really don't. And it's 2 houses for me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else from the board?
No, we just accept them into the record.
Oh, okay. Yep, gotcha.
People, I'm telling you, look it up though. Put the address in on the computer and then look up real estate agents and then put the same 61 East Main. All the numbers
All
are
right,
wrong.
sir.
They're wrong.
Sir, yeah.
They're
Thank
wrong.
you.
The numbers are wrong. There's something
Thank
fishy
you,
going on.
thank you for your comments, and I'm sure that you could speak to whoever you
No, I'm
want
just
after
saying,
the
but
meeting.
just do it.
have
Do
to
your
continue
research.
with the meeting. Any of the board members have any comments?
And the house ain't for sale.
Michelle?
He was gonna address it.
Right.
So what I can tell the board is that we are in the process of preparing a traffic impact statement or a study. We have to submit an application to the New York State DOT for entrance onto 94 because we're modifying the entrance. It's going to be a new proposed use, but a proposed building and structure of parking. It's got to be reviewed. It'll be by the New York State DOT. So they'll have the jurisdiction on what the traffic situation is on 94 and 208. Our submittal to the DOT kind of depends on getting some feedback from the ZBA, whether this is going to be a 28-unit dwelling complex, or this is going to be residential on top and commercial and tolerance. And so we're kind of stuck and moving that forward until we know the direction that we're heading. But it absolutely will be provided and submitted, it has to be.
Correct.
So that would have to be done anyway. Did you take into consideration what Mr. Kiernan had said about the sidewalk? Looping it around for safety for
We absolutely
bicycles?
will. That was a great comment.
He's not able to be here and he
Right.
asked me to ask him,
It's
so.
a planning issue, so we're going to take that into account when we
Right.
modify the plans and go
Okay.
back to planning. I would also make an important comment here that commercial on the first floor with residential on the second floor will generate significantly higher traffic volumes than residential on both floors. This is a much less intense traffic use, which you're looking at right here, as opposed to putting commercial on the first floor of both buildings. It's important to know.
For those that couldn't hear in the back, what was said was a traffic study will be done. They're looking for the board's feelings on it, not a vote, not a decision, but just which way they're going to go. They feel that there'll be more traffic generated with office on the bottom and residential on top than all residential. So that's what was just said, if anybody couldn't hear. Okay.
And so we're going to hold this over, so,
I mean, nobody else has any comments.
So what we can do is, there's two potentials. We can leave this open, but it would be left open for quite some time because they'd be going through the planning board process. The other option, because remember that all of the planning will still be subject to public hearings, is to close this portion of the public hearing, close the public hearing, give the applicant your feedback. That feedback is non-binding, okay? It's just your general thoughts, and again, we can't take action, and that could change. Once they go through the planning process, I discussed it with the applicant's attorney, if we do close it, if there is a significant change, i.e. the planning board says we're gonna rotate the side of it, we're gonna rotate the buildings on its axis or something like that, we would reserve the right